Hello students. What I wanted to do now is just give you a quick overview of the agenda for this week. I'm going to start with the visual communication in the news. It's been a very busy week for that. Two of the biggest events have to do with the blackface controversy surrounding the governor of the state of Virginia. And then the other one is Jeff Bezos standing up to the National Enquirer, who he says tried to blackmail him by saying that they would not release pictures that they had of him if he would do a couple things they wanted. So both of those are linked. It's generally the New York Times account of the story is in the visual communication in the news. Two lesser ones were the fact that Instagram has banned graphic images of self-harm. And that's sort of a double-edged sword because obviously you don't want people to be displaying those things for some kind of ghoulish purpose. But on the other hand, if there is someone who has suffered depression and might harm themselves, and then they've sort of come out the other end, then images of, that could be helpful to someone in a similar circumstance. And then finally, the lightest of all is that there are 59 new emojis, and many of them basically speak of greater inclusivity. So we have emojis depicting various kinds of physical disability, emojis that would allow you to show yourself as a couple with another person, and you get to pick both the gender and race of these, icon characters. So that was kind of an interesting little bit of, fun news for visual communication. So I just looked into your VASMLs, and some of you are making wonderful progress recounting how it is that you see your social media sort of having some kind of visual affordances to them. There's a few of you who have not yet begun there, so I encourage you to start that, because this is what you need as the raw material at the end of the term when you're going to write a very brief account of what it is you learned by paying attention to the visual affordances in the social media that you use. Your first shot at visual analysis of images, they were wonderful. So what I did was I commented right in the discussion board below your images and what you had said about them. And there were a couple people who had a little difficulty posting, and I'm very happy that they got in touch with me. So they either sent their content as a attachment to an email, and I was able to post it for them, or they were able to get the words in, but not the images, and I was able to get those images to display in that discussion board. So if you ever have any technical difficulties, by all means get in touch with me, and I will see what I can do to resolve those difficulties. So what you'll find in this module is, I think it's a 13-minute video where I give you a synopsis of the chapter, The Nature and Power of Images. And I do that because the chapter was fairly long, very broad, and in some cases quite dense. So what I tried to do was explain, provide my understanding of what the author's main points are at various points in that chapter. And then there's a page and a brief video talking about Gestalt theory. So you'll recall we began the semester with several different theoretical approaches to visual communication. One of them was Gestalt. So I'll give you a quick primer on Gestalt. So I've got both a little video and then a couple of links to some of the sort of heavy hitters in Gestalt theory. And then one of the readings for this week, it will actually be more of a viewing than a reading, because what it is, it's a 35-slide PowerPoint or PDF about a book called Picture This, How Pictures Work by Molly Bang. And in effect, that is a primer on Gestalt theory in practice, and I think you'll find that interesting and fairly enjoyable. So that's Gestalt theory a la Rudolf Arnheim and Molly Bang. And then there are three other topics that show up in the chapter. One is chaos theory, which is a huge and complicated topic. So all I have is just a very brief link in there to explain how it is that chaos theory might be helpful in trying to understand how it is that we make sense of the visual stimuli that come and land on the back of our retina. And then also there's a section on autism, because the author says some interesting things about autism and how people on the autism spectrum might process images differently. And there's this notion of dual exceptionality, someone who maybe is somewhat deficient in one kind of information processing, such as reading or writing, and they might be quite gifted and talented in another kind, including images or manipulation of numbers. Unfortunately, the author makes a couple of statements that seem a little sort of prejudicial and not sort of, they're not adequately sensitive to people who are somewhere on the autism spectrum. So I mentioned that in that page. And then finally, there's a little bit on the business applications of the corporate vision. So once again, in the chapter, The Nature and Power of Images, there's mention of this sort of, visualization. And visualization is talked about in a couple ways. One is where these outstanding athletes are taught to use visualization to accomplish their goal. But another way is the way businesses have mission statements and vision statements. And so I've got a little page on that, because one of your upcoming projects is you will be sort of envisioning yourself, and you'll be doing a photo manipulation project where you will sort of create a visual, it is a believable, impossible, aspirational image of yourself. So I think that's sufficient for an introduction at this point. I'm going to stick this video at the top of the page, which is the agenda for the week, and then all the other ones are probably working. I'll make sure there is a quiz on one of the readings, and I'll make sure that that quiz is ready to go and has the appropriate date. So that would be, say, next Sunday, 11:59 p.m. is when you would have to do the quiz for the particular chapter, which is about graphic design. Okay, talk to you later.